Gong-gil saved Ji-young at the moment of crisis, and the king began to fight the rebels with all his might. Gong-gil saved Ji-young at the moment of crisis, and the king began to fight the rebels with all his might. The meaning behind it was that since the king was too young, Jezun intended to rule the nation by using his power. The queen and the king's younger brother were then forced to take over the throne. Jezun spread false rumors among the people, claiming that the king had killed his grandmother and many officials before going hunting in the mountains. Soon after, he held a coronation ceremony for the new king. Ji-young handed Gong-gil a keychain and told him to say she was still alive, and at that moment the king, having barely escaped with his life, returned to the palace and begged that he would step down, asking them to spare his brother and to keep the throne secure. Ji-young handed Gong-gil a keychain and told him to say she was still alive, and at that moment the king, having barely escaped with his life, returned to the palace and begged that he would step down, asking them to spare his brother and to keep the throne secure. Ji-young handed Gong-gil a keychain and told him to say she was still alive, and at that moment the king, having barely escaped with his life, returned to the palace and begged that he would step down, asking them to spare his brother and to keep the throne secure. The next day, under everyone's watchful eyes, the king was relocated to another region. Along the way, Jezun secretly ordered his assassination, feeling pleased with himself. Meanwhile, Queen Kong Mokju did not rejoice, she quietly watched the king depart from afar. As the king walked past the jeering crowd, Ji-young appeared and promised to save him, giving him courage. The king, who loved her deeply, felt heartbroken leaving her behind. After traveling for a while, the soldiers suddenly turned their swords on the king, but his warriors defeated them and rescued him. As expected, Jezun appeared with many soldiers to confirm the king's death, only to be shocked when the king and his elite guards stood firm. Though the king's elite forces were far fewer than the rebels, when his supporters, and even the palace chefs, joined the fight, Jezun laughed loudly in disbelief. The battle soon began, and when the king's soldiers were overwhelmed by the rebels, a weak grenade exploded, and a strange-looking man appeared. He was the inventor who had made the rice cooker, arriving from afar to help the king and Ji-young after hearing of the chaotic situation. Bewildered by gunpowder and strange weapons, the rebels were all subdued. Jezun kidnapped Ji-young and told the king to go elsewhere alone, then disappeared, threatening to kill Ji-young if any other soldiers came. The king agreed and went alone toward Jezun, while Gong-gil and the elite warriors reclaimed the palace, executing the rebellious officials and Queen Kong Mokju, then restored order in the palace. The king and Jezun met again, and a fierce battle began. At that moment, a book hidden in Jezun's clothes fell, and the king grew weak, unable to continue fighting, while Ji-young picked up the book and ran to the king in danger. Jezun swung his sword toward the king, but Ji-young embraced the king and took the blow herself. Regaining his senses, the king struck Jezun down with a single blow and cried sorrowfully over the collapsing Ji-young. At that moment, the surroundings darkened, and the moon began to turn red. Bright glowing letters emerged from the book, lifting Ji-young's body into the air. In her fading consciousness, Ji-young whispered to the king, "I never wanted to go back to the future. I love you." Watching Ji-young drift away, the king shouted, "I will definitely come to find you." But Ji-young vanished without a trace. Ji-young woke up in the hospital, and the cut on the back of her neck proved it was no dream. She clutched the book, calling out for the king dozens of times, but she couldn't return to the past. Searching online for information about the king, she found nothing, only that he was missing. A month later, at the request of a senior acquaintance, Jiang started working in a hotel kitchen and was surprised to find Giljiam and the chefs she had worked with in the past were all there, though they had never seen her before. The hotel was soon to hold a food evaluation, and Jiang, recalling the dishes she had prepared for the king in the past, presented her finest cuisine, earning a reputation as the top chef. One day, an unwelcome guest complained that Jiang's cooking was terrible. The guest turned out to be Im Song-jae. Jiang was shocked, but he did not recognize her. As the complaints continued, Jiang got angry too, and the two began to argue. At that moment, a familiar voice came from behind. Jiang thought, could it be the king, and turned around, only to see the king she had been desperately searching for. The king scolded Im Song-jae, and the hotel staff escorted him outside. Jiang gazed at the king in awe. The king said to Jiang, "I told you I'd come to find you." As he was about to taste the food, Jiang hugged him from behind, and the king turned around to kiss her. Their beautiful reunion moved the hotel guests and staff, who celebrated them. Jiang and the king lived together in the same house, enjoying every day filled with love and happiness. Jiang never questioned how the king had come from the past to the present, she simply wished for their continued happiness.